You all right? My name's Paul. I've got autism and I make random videos based on my version of autism and the way my head works. And I stick the videos on the internet in case you want to watch them. And this is three questions, or whatever I've renamed it, if I do, where I just answer questions that you send me, just because it's quicker videos, should have been a bit of fun, and I just should have got around to making more of them. But I've got a couple of days off, which gave me a bit of freedom to put these together. And this should be, by rights, the third of the three videos that I'm doing. So, without further ado, let's get into them. Quite juicy, these ones. So, question one. I hate my job and I cannot afford to quit. What should I do? Well, if you've watched any of my recent videos, especially the butterfly effect videos, you will see someone who got broken by his work, or more specifically his workplace and the decisions being made. And it was horrible. It wasn't fun. It wasn't even just a doable experience. It was negative. It was against me, and I, like you, couldn't afford to quit. And I ultimately got buried mentally by it, and it wasn't nice at all. Even looking back now, when I watch them videos, I can see the life just isn't there in my eyes, and it's horrible because obviously I don't see myself ever. I don't even look at my face when I wash, when I wash my face in the in the sink. It's just water on, scratch a towel down my face as hard as I can do it, and jobs are good. But I get where you're coming from and how horrible it is. So I can't tell you what to do in relation to a job you hate. The only thing I can tell you to do is try and get out of there. Get on the internet, type in CV examples, have a look at good CVs that have been put together. What do you work in? I don't know what, they never said what they work in. So whatever your industry is, like if you were a fire engineer, type in fire engineer CV and then change it to images. Have a look, see how people put their CVs together, see what information you've got in yours versus there. Get rid of the bump, get rid of the fluff, get rid of the stuff that it really isn't going to be relevant. Leave it open so they have to get you in for the interview to talk about it. Like my CV honestly could be about 8 pages long, but in England, you're not meant to go over 2 pages. So I don't have references on there anymore. I just have references available on request. I changed my CV so everything is in a table, but then I hid the table. So everything's in a very well structured format and nothing's bunched up. And then I also convert it to PDF so nobody can do anything with it unless they run it through a converter, but you know what I mean. I just don't leave it in a Word format. But I made sure my CV is up to date and I have gone on every job site and I have put my CV on every single one of them. I have contacted agencies that represent my type of work. I have been on the job sites which are for the companies to see if they've got any vacancies. So I know the type of company that might employ someone like me, see if they've got any vacancies knocking about. You can't do anything to change a bad employer. That unfortunately is my curse. Depending on when I put this video out, watch this space in case I do change employer in the meantime because I don't want to give a new employer a bad rap. And I've not actually given my current one a bad rap. I have just told you the truth, the absolute truth of how they've neglected an employee with autism who has not been quiet about having autism and needing reasonable adjustments. But unfortunately, there are bad employers out there. There are bad workplaces. There are people with horrible working practices that are out there still too. We can't change that. But here we go. Here's a good bit of advice. Do not be loyal to an employer. Tell yourself what I've started to tell myself. I exchange my time and my skill. In fact, no, I exchange my time for a salary that's been agreed. Now, in that time, I will do the job you pay me to do. But if you want more, you have to give more. If you want me to be committed to the company, give me a reason to be, because you're doing what every other company will do. You're paying me for my time. I had to disassociate my own passion that I have for my industry from the work I do for the companies because it's so rare. In fact, it's not happened yet. No one has cared as much as I do about the industry I work in, who I've represented, which makes it very difficult for me. So, apart from doing your CV, getting yourself on job sites, putting yourself out there, answering the phone when unknown numbers come through, which is always horrible, and disassociating with the care and interest and time served that you've put into employers. So just remember, you're just a pawn to them. You're just someone who does the work that you also then get paid to do. So you don't owe them more than that. And when you can remove yourself and give yourself the freedom of putting your self-interest first, your life, your work-life balance always needs to be in the swing of life first. Because if you've got an unhappy life, you can't do work. And if you've got an unhappy work, you can't have a life. So that would be my advice. Probably terrible, I know that, but I'm only sharing what I've exactly done. And I'm a great believer in if I will put my money where my mouth is. If it works for me or if it's what I'm willing to do, I will then pass that to others because I don't ask other people to do what I'm not willing to do myself. Hope that made sense. Question 2. Were you treated differently after your autism diagnosis? Yes, I was. As horrible as it is, I didn't see it at the time. I didn't see people treating me different. My mum, she didn't treat me different. I think I've mentioned in this, she said, "Well, you didn't have that when you lived with me." Like, no, you've no idea how well I mask. Um, because I was always the kid who never wanted to bring attention to my house. I never wanted, don't poo on your own doorstep, as a well-known saying. But there's a swear word in there, and I don't swear when I do these. Respect and all that. But no, I just always made sure I had a mask on at home because I didn't want the attention. And when I was a teenager, if my mum saw me more than half an hour in an entire week, she was lucky. I was just never around. And when I was around, I was in my room. But anyway, we're not talking about that. When I got my diagnosis, I told my boss at the time. He was actually really good about it for a little while. Didn't last long. And I extended that. I told friends. I told people I know. Never told family because I'm not that close to my family. Not that we fell out. We're just not a close family. And some people I know as acquaintances. So obviously these friends who you see, unconditional, it's fine, everything's good. And then there are acquaintances who are people you know in your life. You might not see or hear from them often, but when you do, it's usually for a reason. Even if it's just to go out for food, you'd never just knock on and go, "All right, mate, what are you up to today?" "Oh, I'm just trying to unclog me sink." "Need a hand?" That's not what acquaintances do. But my acquaintances, when they learned I had autism, their communication reduced. So much so that some of them I don't even speak to anymore. And it's not my fault. I was born with autism. It's just no one knew until I was in my 30s. And when I was diagnosed and I told people, I didn't notice a change. But here we are many years down the line. And I've never fell out with any of the acquaintances that I've got in my life. But the amount of acquaintances I've got, honest to God, like I used to be able to count them on fingers and toes. Now I can count them on one hand. And I don't need all the hand. So yeah, people might not have treated me differently in respect to how they spoke to me, how they acted around me, the whatever we might have done previously. That's not changed. What's changed is they've just sort of gone, "Don't want that anymore with me." A bit like when you grab the guy on Google Maps and like throw him around and drop him on a road. They kind of did that from their personal life and just tossed me to one side. Because nothing else changed. I just now have a label, and I guess that's too much for some people without ever trying to understand it. And you know what? That's fine. I don't need people like that in my life anyway. So it's not like I've got a loss going on. It's just I've always got that thing in my mind where I always need resolution. So it's like, well, why don't we talk anymore? There's that unresolved. Why I need the answer. And it just sort of doesn't eat me up, but I always need an answer for everything. I find the unknown very tricky to deal with. So that's the only problem it brought up. So there we go. I hope that answered the question. And then, last but not least, question 3. How should I respond when someone says, "You don't seem autistic"? I don't know. Punch them? Kidding. Do not punch people. Please. Don't want you making me an accomplice to your hate crimes. Um, it's tricky, isn't it? Because when you know about autism, when you live with autism, when you educate on autism, when you read forums, watch videos of people with autism, you're very much involved in autism. But some people don't have autism. They don't know people with autism. They're not related to people with autism. So what are they not going to do? They're not going to fill their time learning about autism. So for some people, they might have a stereotype, a preconceived idea of what autism might be, which would then trigger that response of, "You don't seem autistic." Can't help that. Can't help them. All you can ever do is once somebody says something ignorant, rude, nasty, disrespectful, you can calmly offer a bit of education of why they shouldn't say that because of how it makes you feel. And then that leaves the ball fully in their court to how they respond next. They could go, "Oh, well, never realized. Huh. All right, that'll do." I'm not after you to bend your knee and, pray to me forevermore to get my forgiveness, but you can't control what other people think. You can't control how other people learn. You can't control their environment of how they learn about autism. So some people might say something which to you is crazily offensive, rude, disrespectful, but to them, they're just giving a response. So you can't be too harsh on a response. You could say, "Well, I am." It's not going to go anywhere, but you don't seem autistic. Well, you don't seem like an idiot. You shouldn't do that because then that makes you rude. You never want to be the person who's the wrong foot. You always want to be the person with the higher ground. "Well, it wasn't me who said that." "Well, it wasn't me who responded that way." "Well, I didn't lash out. I didn't break it. I didn't shout. I didn't swear." You've always got to be that person because why resort to bad behavior? But when people say you don't seem autistic, it depends who the person is. If it's a family member, hopefully they'll grant you the time so you can sit them down and offer that bit of education of why even saying something like that is really rude. If it's a friend, a real friend, not the acquaintances I talk about, but if it's a friend, they should also be willing to take the time to learn about you. Because if you let people know that serious mood affectors are based around how people treat you based off knowing you're autistic, like the best response I ever got was my friend Craig. I told him I was autistic. He went, "All right." Because he didn't care. I could have said, "By the way, I'm having a sex change." He'd go, "All right." He just, I'm his friend. It doesn't matter what comes with that. As long as I'm a decent person, respectful, that's all you need. But depending on who the person is, depends on how invested you need to be in your response. If there's someone you don't barely know and that you think that's a bit rude, it's not the time and the place for you to, give them the education that they might need for that topic. Some people, you might try and offer an education. I personally know a couple of people who, if I even dared say, "Look, that's rude," that's not nice to say. It's quite disingenuous. It makes me feel like you don't understand what I have to actually do, what I have to go through, how I have to mask for you so you feel better. Something like that is really rude from someone like me. that if I went to the effort of even saying that, it'd fall on, to use an ableist term, it would fall on deaf ears. It really would. So why would I waste my breath in trying to say that? All it's going to do, and I think this is the best part, how should you respond? You should respond by, depending on who that person is in your hierarchy of importance, depends on how much interest and effort you take to educate them, because you do have the responsibility to offer them an education in something they know nothing about and you have your experience in. But if they fall into the category of, it doesn't really matter, I don't know you that well, I don't think we're going to talk much after this, then let that be the decider. Let that be the dictator of how well you stay connected with people. But don't forget, people who are not involved in autism won't see "you don't seem autistic" as a bad thing to say. I remember speaking to someone in my workplace who let me know that when they learned I was autistic, they went, "Oh, are you? Yeah, I think I'm autistic because I do things in fours. Can't have one chocolate biscuit. I have four chocolate biscuits." Now, today, as I've been autistic for a lot longer and understand it much better than I did when I was first diagnosed, I find that really rude and offensive now. Whereas back then, I just laughed it off. But then I've got to make that decision of, do I see them as a friend? If I do, I'll say, "Look, mate, that was quite rude. You might do things in fours, but it doesn't mean you're autistic." But saying something like that, it just undermines, undervalues, makes me feel ABC. So if I think of a friend, I'll do that, and then their response will be determining where we go next. But if I just see them as a coworker and they say something like that, I just then would continue to go, "Okay, right." And I'll just brush it off because it's not relevant. But in the end, they'll trip themselves up by saying it to the wrong person at the wrong time and having the rebuttal for it. So, unfortunately, there isn't a response to give, but how you should respond should be the way you respond to everything else. Don't be the attacker, don't be the aggressor, don't be the anger, don't be the ire. Don't be the reason the situation turns. Always take the higher ground, because it's not you who displays, even unconsciously in some circumstances, it's not you who displays the ignorance. So just keep calm, is the way I'd say it. So there we go. 3 questions done. That's this little portion of 3 questions done. The 3 videos are over. Please remember that they are just my opinion. I don't ask you to share it. And if we clash with opinions, that's fine. We're allowed to be right. We're allowed to be wrong. It's how we learn. And if you want me to answer your questions within reason, then drop me an email at oldandautistic@gmail.com. It is always written in the description of the videos, and I will endeavour, albeit it'll take me a while, but I always endeavour to try to answer what people ask. But until next time, my friends, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, keep smiling.